Here. For those of you who don't know me, I'm on a 42-day hunger strike in protest against the rollout of universal credit here in the UK. Now, one of the things that the primary reason why I'm on a 42-day hunger strike is because this benefit that was supposed to be a safety net for people means that when people apply, they have to wait 42 days before any money comes through. So that's 42 days with no money whatsoever. Now, the system that was set up, it basically is supposed to crunch down 6 benefits into one and make the whole system more straightforward, more accessible to people. It's just not the case, and it's punitive, and it's difficult for people to get, and it's just not what it's supposed to be. So yeah, I just want to put in my tuppence worth and hopefully get people thinking. Just recently, I sent out a rather grumpy WordPress blog, and basically it was saying that I was knackered, I was just exhausted, and I didn't feel great. And it was grumpy, and it was angry, and I think it was important to get that across, because I think a lot of people are going through this, and I'm 38 days into this hunger strike, and I think it was important to show that I was incredibly uncomfortable with it. I hadn't slept because of hunger. I was cold. I was tired. I was, like I say, I was hungry, and just felt really quite grumpy about it all. And who's to blame me? But the thing to really stress here is that I'm doing this out of choice. The reason I'm doing it is hopefully to raise awareness, but also to really help focus my mind on what it must be like for people. Now, we're told that with benefits prior to this, that people could only afford to heat or eat, and what's actually happening is that people can afford to neither heat or eat. They're starving, and they're living in cold environments. I know one of the biggest risks to me is hypothermia, and I have access to hot bath, and I have access to radiators that work. So I think that's important to stress. I'm not sitting thinking, oh God, my power is just about to run out, because I know it's there, and that's keeping up my core temperature, because that to my mind is the biggest risk to me. Hypothermia, although it's something that people walking in the Arctic might get, hypothermia is something that you get if you live in suboptimal temperatures without putting in calories. And it's gradual, and it's insidious, and it kills people. Let's not forget that the BMJ, the British Medical Journal, a reputable bunch of folk, published a piece that said 120,000 people have died prematurely since the beginning of austerity. 120,000 people have died prematurely. Now, a lot of people are saying correlation doesn't mean causation, but God, the statistics are compelling, aren't they? So, we need to keep these things in mind. What the other motivators for me to be doing this were that 300,000 people last year lost their job because of mental ill health. That was a report by Mind. And I'm imagining these people who go to their GPs and say, I've got a mental health problem, stroke physical disability, stroke something wrong with me, and I've had to give up work. And the GP is saying, there are no services for you, there's nothing for you for months, years, ever. In the case of people with mental health problems, some people are being diagnosed with my condition, which is borderline personality disorder. They're getting diagnosed with that and being offered no services whatsoever. And on top of that, they're then being told, sorry mate, you're not going to have any money for 42 days. And we're told, Philip Hammond from the last budget told us that things are going to improve. So the 42-day wait is now going to be 35-day wait. We're told that it's going to be easier for people to access crisis funds, stroke advance payments. To my mind, there's no difference. But the thing is, with crisis and advance payments, they have to pay that back from the paltry sum that their universal credit is. From the people I've heard from, you only get 2 payments from the crisis fund during a 5/6 week period, and for people, which is only half the amount that you would get with universal credit. So this means that people who are under 25 are expected to live on 2 lots of £29.05, I think the sum is, twice over a 5/6 week period. They're being told to go and use food banks, and you're only allowed to use food banks 3 times a year. So these are desperate times. So people are desperate. They're living in hunger. They're living in the cold, and they're dying. What more reputable organisation than the British Medical Journal is there to say, look, what we're doing to our citizens is awful? We're told that from Shelter that 300,000 people are now homeless in the UK, and that the rollout of universal credit is contributing to that massively. 300,000 people homeless. That's the population of Newcastle, which is one of our larger cities. Desperate times. So I was grumpy. One of the stories that really jumped out at me recently was there was a debate. There's a 3rd debate in Parliament about universal credit. It was another debate that the government lost terribly, and you'd think that the government would finally yield and say, look, we've lost 3 debates now, it's time to think again. But no, they'll carry on regardless. But during this debate, MP Frank Field, he's a Labour MP, I think in the Wirral, please correct me later, but he told Parliament about his one of his constituents who had gone to a local food bank, and the food bank told him about this, and that this guy had told them that this week had been a good week because he and his family had been invited to the wake at a funeral so that they could eat the food that was left over after the guests had left it. So they'd be invited to a funeral so that they could have access to food. When he said this in Parliament, one of the responding Conservative MPs, she just burst into tears, and she was trying to reply without crying, and was unable to do so. So Frank Field interrupted her gently and said that this had been the first time he'd actually been able to relay that story without crying himself. So he really understood where she was coming from. So it's desperate. On top of that, we have a system of benefit sanctioning, where people have their benefits stopped for anything between 3 days and 3 years for arbitrary reasons, such as not filling out a form correctly or missing a meeting. Now, I was a social worker for 17 years. If somebody hadn't filled a form out correctly, if somebody hadn't come to a meeting, now chase them up, because these are vulnerable people. They're usually people with physical disabilities, mental health problems. I'd like to know what was going on. If I didn't get an answer from them, I'd contact their friends and or family, who were involved with them. But that's just not going on. Instead, people are just having their benefits stopped, and if they do it more than once, then the sanction increases. I've been doing this now for 38 days, and I tell you what, having no food for 38 days really, really focuses the mind. We need a system now, today, that isn't just fit for purpose. We need a system that we're proud of. We need a system that shows that we are compassionate and loving and caring about our vulnerable people when they're at their most vulnerable. For too many years now, we've had this, I would say, a gradual drip, but sometimes it's been a sort of massive slap. It's where people with physical or mental health problems claiming benefits are seen as skivers and shirkers and workless, and we're given the most extreme examples, and we're being invited to extrapolate that to everybody who's ever applied for a benefit. Do you know what the rate is for people fraudulently claiming benefits? It's 0.7%. 0.7%. So we're punishing 99.3% of applicants for this 0.7% that we believe are claiming fraudulently. And that can't be good enough. We are making people who are vulnerable, people with physical and mental health or mental health problems, we're making them completely responsible for gathering all the information that they require to make their application. The people at the Department of Work and Pensions, they know the system, they know how it works, they know what's required. And a system that is working would have these assessors as enablers, as people who would guide people through the process and help them get to that point where they have all the information that they require. But no, they somehow they're guarding this money jealously. They're preventing people from their applications going through. Their primary reason for existence is to prevent people from getting what they're entitled to. The main problem with our benefit system is the benefits are currently, I think the last figure was £2 billion underclaimed. So there's £2 billion of benefits that haven't been claimed that should have been claimed. And that's a massive hole, and that's a massive failing in that department. And if it was a system that was compassionate, loving, caring, enabling, then that just wouldn't be the case. And it would be a safety net. People, the anxiety levels in people is massive because, even after 42 days, people aren't certain that they're going to get money. And very often they don't, because somebody hasn't crossed a T or dotted an I or turned up to the right meeting. Going back to benefit sanctions, we were told that benefit sanctions are only used as a last resort. Now, Universal Credit was just recently rolled out in Newcastle, and 25% of applicants had their benefits sanctioned straight away. So that's 25%. That's 1 in 4 people had their benefits sanctioned. So it doesn't sound like a last resort, does it? It sounds like this is something that again, is looking to save money. But the thing is, the amount of money that's being saved, when we look at, compare it to, say, tax evasion and tax avoidance, it's minuscule. And if we had a system that was a proper safety net, then I'm certain that people would be using it as a safety net and using it as a launch pad to get into work. I mean, having not eaten for 38 days, I'm fatigued, I'm tired, I'm cold, my clothes don't fit me. You get these little trite conversations that people have with their advisors saying, yes, wear a suit to your interviews, now that'll optimise your chance of getting a job. I haven't got anything that fits me. I got married 2 months ago. My wedding ring, I can always fit it around my waist. It's, It's desperate. You know, if we want to set people up to work, then do it. You know, support people, enable people. We don't need a stick. People don't need to be battered with a stick. And that's the key thing. These people aren't others. These aren't other people. They're you and me. You know, they're not just people like you and me. They are you and me. You know? My big thing currently is with the sanctioning regime, which is just bizarre. It is nothing more than punishment, and it's punishing people without due legal process. You know how this slipped through, I don't know. People are being fined without having access to the law. Now, and this is contrary to the human rights. I'll just read from the Article 6 of the European Convention on Human Rights, okay? It says that people must have a right to a fair trial, including a right to a public hearing before an independent and impartial tribunal within a reasonable time. There must be a presumption of innocence, and other minimal rights must be, for those charged with a criminal offence, there must be, as I say, the presumption of innocence, but they must also have adequate time and the facilities to prepare a defence and have access to legal representation and the right to examine witnesses. Now this is key within the Department of Work and Pensions, because people don't know who has imposed this cut on them, who's imposed the sanction. There is somebody called a decision maker who is faceless and nameless. That's all they're known as, is a decision maker. Christmas must be an absolute fucking hoot around their place. So they don't know who to challenge. So they must have the right to challenge and examine witnesses, or have the right for them to be examined by someone on their behalf. And they must, if necessary, have the assistance of an interpreter. And that's not happening. There's nothing like that's happening. Basically, stroke of a pen, your money has stopped for between 3 days and 3 years. I've heard from people who've had their money stopped between 12 weeks and a year. And as you can imagine, the effect on their lives is devastating. You know, they're in all kinds of difficulty. I think we need a system that we're proud of. It really is that simple. Imagine what that system would look like. You know, but we've built up over the past few years a culture of hatred, of vilification, of ridicule. You know, look at the funny people on Benefit Street. That's, you know, look at the woman who's got 423 children and lives in a great big shoe. You know, a steady trickle of hateful bollocks. And that is reflected in this hateful, petty, shitty little system. And when I claimed benefits about 423 years ago, it was recognised that getting a low income, a subsistence income, which that's all it is, getting that subsistence income was punishment enough. That was sanction enough to encourage people back into work. You know, and that is as true today as it was then. But for some reason, we want to punish them more. We want to kick people when they're down, when there are no services. It really is time to change that. Our society is taking a bit of a weird turn. Just recently, the stats for disability hate crimes against people with physical and or mental health problems has come out. And in the year 2016 to 2017, the rate of disability hate crime went up by 53%. That's 53%. We have grown. We have fed this culture of hatred that it's okay to attack. In fact, it's encouraged. You know, if this is what's happening in the newspapers, if this is what's happening on the television, it's okay to just rip the shit out of our most vulnerable when they're at their most vulnerable. And that has been passed along to all members of society. 53% in 1 year. Who knows how this will progress? So as I say, benefit sanctions must stop. That's it. They must end. There is no reason for them. They must just come to an end. That call it a day. Failed experiment. Stop. Universal credit must be administered in a kind, caring, loving way. These are our most vulnerable at the most vulnerable. It's time to change the system completely. Make it an enabling one. Make it one that supports people in their applications, that supports people to find out what they're entitled to. This is a covenant that millions of people have paid into. This safety net that millions of people have paid into, and that at the time when they're at the most needed, they're just not getting those results. Anyway, those are my thoughts just now. Going back to the hunger strike, I'm relatively well. As I said before, I'm tired, I'm cold, I'm hungry. I think yesterday's grump was, as well as the horrible story about the funeral. It was a lot to do with. I think I told myself that I'm in the last week of my hunger strike, and somehow my body kind of kicked in and went, "Oh, brilliant! That food must be forthcoming. Then this is great." And my body went into "let's get the food into my body" sort of mode. And obviously food isn't going to be happening until Wednesday. It was uncomfortable, probably one of the most uncomfortable days I've had, but it's nowhere near as uncomfortable as people who we're putting through this really shit system. And it is shit. It's so not good enough, and it's not British, it's not who we are. I walked around this lovely island of ours, and everybody I bumped into was kind, compassionate, hospitable. I'm a man with a mental health problem. I was walking around the edge of the UK telling people what my issues were, and they were inviting me into their homes, they were feeding me, they were giving me anything that they possibly could to help me on my way. And these weren't different people, these were us. And this system doesn't represent us. This isn't us. So I'll wind up there. I'll be back in touch towards the end of it, and I'll tell you what it's like to gradually. Well, I'll be talking what it's like to be at the end of the 42 days, and please share this. Please talk about this. That's the good news. I mean, I suppose one of the things I'd wanted to do with this, I wanted to save the world. I wanted things to change, and that's obviously naive. But the good thing is, thousands of people have watched the videos. Thousands of people have shared the videos. Thousands of people have read the blog and shared it, and over Twitter, hundreds of thousands of people have engaged with this. So it's hundreds of thousands of people, and that's brilliant. All I want for people, somebody recently got in touch with me and said, why do I sign the petition? There is no fucking petition, okay? We live in a democracy, and we're lucky we live in a democracy. All I'm asking from you, if you think what I've said is valid, if you think what I've said is worth your righteous indignation, it is so easy to get in touch with your local councillor. It is so easy to get in touch with your local MP. All of them are contactable through Twitter, through email, through letter, by phone. You can actually go and see them. They all have regular surgeries where you can say to them what I've told you. Say, this isn't good enough. This doesn't represent me. This is not me. I'm not a hateful person. These people that we're punishing, they are you, they are me, they are all of us. And by punishing them, we're punishing us. So let's stop that now. Go and see your representatives. Say something. Do something. There is no petition. Okay, I'll speak soon. Cheers just now.